Recently, we had the release of the movie Late Night with the Devil, a movie that tells the story of a talk show TV host from the 70s, that during a show of Halloween special, he brings some attractions that are possibly supernatural. But he didn't know that along with these attractions, he was also inviting the devil to be part of the show. And I really liked the movie. I thought it was very fun. It's beautifully directed. The 70s setting and recreation is very well done. The performances are great, especially from the protagonist, that is the actor David Dalsmatian. But if you are looking for something that will really scare you, this is not exactly the movie for you. It is a horror movie, but at the same time, there are some aspects of comedy and jump scares. And besides the 70s recreation and also the idea that this is an event that really happened, and it is being portrayed as a documentary that is telling the events that happened that night, some scenes took me out of the movie, especially when they require visual effects. Because they are CGI, and mixing CGI with the 70s aesthetic, it doesn't really go together. But it's a really fun movie, well put together, and it's really worth your watching. But was looking for more information regarding this movie that I ended up stumbling into another production from the 90s called Ghostwatch. A movie that I have never heard about, but also deals with this idea of a mockumentary. A mockumentary about ghosts in a house and a TV crew that enters the place to spend the night there and check if they're going to have some real interactions with the devil or some spirit that lives there. And this was done way before other mockumentaries like The Witch Blair Project that also played with this idea of real people in an absurd and scary situation. So in the Halloween of 1992, the British channel BBC wanted to make a special show for their viewers to celebrate this date. So without too much warning, it was announced that a TV show called Ghostwatch would be broadcasting this date, being hosted by real TV hosts that were already known by most of the audience. Like for example, the TV host Michael Parkinson.
The program you're about to watch is a unique live investigation of the supernatural. It contains material which some viewers may find to be disturbing.
Also the TV host Sarah Green, that was going to be the person in the house reporting all the events of the night in the show. And her real husband in real life, that was Mike Smith, that was going to be in the studio during the whole show, receiving calls from the viewers. And this was the plot. The TV crew would spend a night in the house that was supposedly haunted, with a family that was recently reporting many supernatural events in the place like poltergeist. This family was the mother, Pamela Early, and her two daughters, the oldest one that is Suzanne, and the youngest one that was Kim. And their report is that the supposed ghost would attack the girls' bedroom at night, doing everything that a regular poltergeist does. Moving furniture around, exploding light bulbs, you know, the regular job of a poltergeist. And according to the girls, this ghost actually had a name that they gave him, that was Mr. Pipes, because usually he made sounds in the pipes of the house inside the walls. So the TV crew of the show Ghostwatch made a deal with the family to spend the night there and check if they could report any supernatural contact. So Sarah Green would stay inside the house with her camera crew. The reporter Craig Charles would stay outside the house talking to the neighbors and the people around, gathering more information for the show, while Michael Parkinson would stay in the studio with the Dr. Lynn Pascal, an specialist in the supernatural cases that was already studying the events with the family recently, including making medical exams with the girls to see what they would report. And of course, the Sarah Green's husband, Mike Smith, that would stay with the callers in the studio and pass them to Michael Parkinson, talk with them live during the show to see if they had some supernatural events that were similar or if they saw something during the show in the recordings of the house. And all the situation is really executed as if it were a real show really happening in real life. So all these characters that are acting like real people would act as if they were doing a real report in the house of Pamela Early. In fact, the family itself are all actresses that are acting as if they were real people. And what I loved about Ghostwatch is that the show catches you right in the beginning with this fidelity to real life events. So it's really like if you're watching a Halloween special TV show with a morbid curiosity to see if something is going to happen in the house. And with all the irreverence of the TV hosts that at first are not really taking the whole thing seriously. They're always trying to keep the humor to make things go well during the night. So you have the reporter Sarah being very nice with the girls, playing games with them to spend the night, while Craig Jones is outside interviewing the neighbors that are obviously very curious to see if something's going to happen in the house. And he's a very funny guy, taking the reports of the people and making jokes all the time. Michael Parkinson himself in the studio is taking the whole thing very lightly, as if none of that was real. So every time he gets a caller that has some kind of similar story to tell, or say that they saw something in the house during the live recording, he always shows a kind of smug smile, just going, okay, of course, sure. And the only person that is actually taking the whole thing seriously is Dr. Lin, that has been following the case of the girls for a long time, and the family itself inside the house. And to add, Michael Parkinson also has a other specialist that is a static guy that enters sometimes during the live broadcasts to speak with them. He is in another studio just debating with them this idea of if there was actually something real in the house with the sounds and the appearances, and give a static explanation just to refute the whole thing. And this is it. The show moves on like an actual live broadcast, always cutting to the studio, to the house, to the streets outside with Craig Jones interviewing the neighbors, and everything is taken as a fun Halloween night. Of course, things start to go a little dark little by little. And it actually is little by little. This is a very slow burn movie. Is that kind of a movie that builds its narrative very slowly, being very punctual with its plot elements. So for example, you have these calls that the studio receives from the viewers, and they always tell some personal ghost story or an information that they know about the house in the show, and little by little this starts to build a mythology around the ghost that really haunts the house. I won't say much about it because I think if you haven't watched yet, it's really worth to really discover his mythology during the narrative. But the truth is that there's no real jump scares or anything that really scares you, at least in the first hour of film. This is a very quick movie, 90 minutes. So I believe the first 50 minutes, things move pretty casually. The only sinister things are the reports of the neighbors and the viewers. So the movie throws some very punctual things, like a strange image flashing very quickly that you don't even know if you actually saw it. So if you're not really paying attention, you might miss it. Again, quick appearances with no warning that are exactly this, appearances and not jump scares. So you gotta have a good eye to catch these appearances in this first hour. But there are plenty of them and it's very fun to keep searching for it. And then things start to go a little darker, especially with strange behaviors from the oldest daughter, Suzanne, because she's the one who suffers the most with the supernatural events in the house, even appearing with many skin marks in the body, supposedly inflicted by the ghost in the house. And it's about the 1 hour mark of the movie that things start to go wild. Various bizarre things start to happen in the house that are out of the control of the TV crew. Again, I won't tell you much about it, but even I got very tense in these moments, because in this first very casual hour of the movie, you start to really relate to the people in the house. It's a slow first hour, but pretty fun and essential for the story, because it really engages you to keep watching just like a viewer that really wants to see what's gonna happen. Like it would happen with a real TV show. And when things start to really go down in the dark area, oh, be sure that they really do. And all executed in the best way, in my opinion, that is without CGI or visual effects for the time. They are all practical effects. And these effects of old cameras of the time that, for the fact of being controlled by camera crew, they sometimes catch a glimpse of something that you really wanted to see, but you don't know exactly if you saw it. Like, did I really see what I think I saw? And generally speaking, I'm not afraid of these movies of ghosts or demons. In fact, I love them. But with this one, I really got very uncomfortable towards this end, with my eyes glued to the TV to see what's gonna happen. It's like that thing where one person disappears in the house and all the cameras in the bedrooms show the bedroom, but they don't show anybody in it. And it really makes you nervous with that questioning, where is this person? You know, it's like when your cat disappears from the house and you spend hours looking for them, then it comes that bad feeling that something very serious might have happened. It's something like that feeling. And besides the fact that I loved this movie, I'm gonna say right away, it's a fantastic production. It's really worth your watch. The story behind the whole thing is even more fascinating. Because again, this production was not wildly announced as something that they would broadcast in the Halloween night. So most people that were watching the show in that day in 1992 in the BBC channel thought they were watching an actual real show, especially because of Michael Parkinson and other TV hosts that were actual TV hosts. Actually, the production was announced as a fictional piece in magazines and things like that, but not in the channel itself. So in the best War of the Worlds radio broadcast way, that was narrated as an actual event happening by Orson Welles, and many people believed that that was true, creating a huge chaos in many houses. The same happens here. Many families sat in front of the TV thinking they were watching an actual TV special from Halloween, thinking that the whole thing was true. So when things start to go really wild at the end of the piece, people actually got terrified in their houses, including kids that were watching the show with their families too. Because taking into consideration that that was the 90s, nobody had information in 1 second like we have today with Twitter or other social medias. Not mentioning that with the avalanche of reality shows that we have today, nobody would believe that this movie was true. But at that time, we had none of that. In fact, Ghostwatch was one of the first productions to try this kind of idea. So during the show's broadcast, people actually called the BBC phone to ask about the show or to talk about their reports, and the people who were just watching at home really were taking the whole thing seriously. So again, hundreds of people just soiled their pants during the show. The whole polemic was so big that the BBC channel was sued many times by viewers after that, alleging that the show traumatized them. And in these legal action cases, there were some that were quite funny, like a woman who wanted to be compensated by the pants of her husband that, again, soiled himself during the show's broadcast. But there were also some very tragic cases like the young man Martin Denham. Apparently, he was one of the viewers that were watching the show during that night, and he got so traumatized, especially because people say that he also had problems in the pipes of his house that could be heard like loud bangs, just like in the show, and sadly he ended up taking his own life sometime after the show because of the trauma of it. So the whole polemic around the show was really serious. So much so that BBC never reprised Ghostwatch in its programming. Just many years later, in fact decades later, that the movie was released again in DVD form, and it's available in very few places, and I really had to dig on the internet to find a full version of the movie, but it's there. If you search for it, you can find it as well. But besides all the polemics and the tragic cases, nothing takes from Ghostwatch the fact that it's a very bold production for the time, very well put together and very well paced in its narrative. Besides being this whole mockumentary idea, the script of this movie really builds very well the whole tension and the necessary elements to a very interesting experience. Always inciting the audience to keep their eyes glued to the screen to see what's gonna happen towards the end. And that doesn't differ from people watching reality shows nowadays. Everybody watches wanting to go through the same experience of the people that are in that reality, desiring to know what's gonna happen in the end. So I loved it. If you haven't watched yet, it's a well worth watch. It hardly will affect you as it affected many people at the time. It will require a lot of contextualization from you to understand what was that reality of the 90s. So it hardly will traumatize you as the people of the time, but it's a really fun experience that is very worth to dive in. What about you? Have you watched Ghostwatch? What did you think? Comment below. And also tell me what other mockumentaries do you know that has this similar vibe. Also comment below and don't forget to leave a like in this video if you liked this content and subscribe to the channel for more content of Trashing with Gus in the future. Thank you very much, see you in the next trashing video, and bye bye.